Hey everyone, it is time to review StarCrawlers, with the usual topics, the story, gameplay, graphics and music. So how do we start this game? The first thing shown to us is that we are getting into Terminus 9. From here, it is up to us to decide who's going to be the main character in this journey. But skipping this part, we get into Stitz, a small place that is run by different characters, where Doc, the bartender, is probably the most influential person, as he's going to provide quests and important pieces of information. The beginning in this game can be a bit slow, so I'll skip the first conversations as they are pretty much to enroll your character into some sketchy jobs and return with a questionable Terminator. Well, you end up stopping a quite advanced robot, and then you have the choice to leave it behind or fix it for your own purposes. Of course there is a catch, because the manufacturer is well known for keeping an eye on these things. So in this story you decide to risk it, and it is up to the Lord whatever happens next, that or your cold sword. The thing is that after a couple of quests you notice that you're getting into way sketchier situations, after your group is asked to retrieve a black box. This is where different personalities call you before starting your quest, as they desire these black bots. Of course they tell you that they just need the information, but who knows what might happen to it if you try to deliver it to third parties. So from here is where I will say, some choices start to slightly shape future things. In this case, I decided to follow the path that whoever hired me first gets the goodies. Nonetheless, these third parties begin to threaten your group, as you start to unravel secrets that shouldn't be revealed. This slowly leads you into the Stella Marine, a ship where its whole crew disappeared, and a bunch of domestic robots start to run rampant. So this story will unfold depending from your choices, as they involve not just different corporations, but also bigger political issues. And as chapters pass, you will get to understand what exactly happened to the Stella Marine's crew, and a big unexpected turn of events. I'll be honest, at first the story was like, okay, I will read all of it, and it wasn't that exciting, until the first moment when different factions try to bribe your team. And even from there it takes some more time for the story to gear up a bit. Now, I will say that it becomes really good until you are almost in last chapters, as you will face a twist where I was like, oh my god, memories from somewhere around 26 years ago coming back. Now, I don't want to spill the beans, because it was something completely unexpected out of this cyberpunk world, but I'm sure that many will enjoy that weird turn of events. And in that particular place you will find some events that are so amazing in nature, that even when it is just a chapter, from there multiple previous events start to make a lot of sense. And my vision of this story changed. Of course, every interaction is going to depend from your party members, as they have particular personalities. Whatever the case, my experience here was an 8. At the end of the journey, I believe it was a good story. Gameplay wise, StarCrawlers offers 4 difficulties: easy, normal, challenging and hardcore. My experience in this game is based on normal difficulty, but if you're a seasoned dungeon crawler, I would recommend you to begin the story in higher difficulty, as normal was perhaps a bit too easy, or at least I saw game over but one time. I'll show the case down the line, but the thing is that if you have that itch for an interesting challenge, then by all means I recommend to increase the difficulty. Otherwise, for most players I will say normal is okay. The very first thing you do in this game is choose your character out of 7 different classes. All of them have their advantages and disadvantages, and while choosing you can check all of their skills, the kind of weapons and equipment they use. For example, the Cyber Ninja is able to use melee weapons, pistols and rifles. However, because of its skills you will be using melee weapons most of the times. As for the armor, you can only use light and tactical. Of course, something similar happens with shields, in addition that you can run heavy ones. And like that, every character has particular things. After this, your first quest will be quite simple, because you need to hire the other crawlers, or as I explained in the story, keep the robot you find along the way and just hire 2 more characters. In a sense, it is also important, as some are able to execute enemies in some events without getting into combat. Some others are able to disarm certain things, identify certain goodies, etc, etc. So I will say that all of them have their own purpose in this game. Probably just in really high difficulties I will say that you need some specific approaches, but that is not the case of this video. So once you have an idea in mind of what you wanna do, in States there are different facilities that I'll explain later. For the time being, let's say that you need to get some money, and that is by getting quests at the bar. Here you will be presented different options after resting or taking on a quest. The one with the star is related to the story, while the other ones are missions that are randomly generated. They can ask you to gather information, get rid of a boss, etc, etc. And something similar happens with the maps. They are randomly generated. At first they can be quite simple, but as you advance more and more things will be added, sometimes in really interesting ways, while others perhaps way too simple. At the end of the day, RNGs will play an important role here, because you can find interesting challenges or pretty much nothing, aside from the skill points and money at the end of the quest. What I enjoy a lot is that for the most part, bosses were quite good. In general there are 2 bosses per map, and of course they give the best loot. At first, I will say, do not get too fits, as you will be changing stuff relatively fast, but in late chapters due to some caps, certain items become really good. On this end, probably the ones I didn't find that often were accessories, so if you find something rated legendary in your first quest, consider yourself lucky as heck. Inside these dungeons there are other activities, like hacking, but to be honest with you, it was way too boring, slow, and plenty of times these things were like, You can upgrade this thing as you advance, but I don't know, this activity didn't really attract my attention. Other things worth looking a bit for are some special items that can be exchanged in the black market, for pieces of equipment. Sometimes they can be quite useful if you don't find good drops, and you can also find items that can reduce your reputation with different factions. My main complaint with this is that I never felt a real impact having a negative standing with any of them. Not sure if they were some of the harder random encounters that may appear, but that is definitely something that needed some extra work. For example, if you have -5, maybe these maps become way harder with several bosses going after you. In -6, increase certain consequences, and so on, perhaps to the point where they send special forces to fight you in other quests. I don't know. I consider this thing needed something to spice things up. As for the positive standings, every corporation has, let's say, specific jobs. Fodskin, for example, is able to give you shields and armor. They are random, but they have good level. So it is an easy way to secure some stuff along the journey. It is worth mentioning that some of these corps may ask for really rare items in exchange for goodies. Whatever the case, it is quite cool that you can get something in return. But returning a bit to the negatives. In general, dungeon crawlers and puzzles go hand in hand, but unfortunately there aren't many in this game, and the random quests have no real puzzles where you need to do something interesting like pressing buttons in order or get convoluted ideas. On that front, I would have liked to see something like this event in a part of the story, where you need to make an enemy step on 3 specific spots. It may sound easy, but I cracked my head something like 30 minutes to complete the puzzle. And yeah, this game needed more of these things. It was so cool that I crave for more. There are some other interesting things, but I don't know, there is room to improve. Out of quest, you can do different things, like manage your goodies, sell and upgrade your stuff. I recommend you to pay a bit of attention here, as sometimes equipment may have really good bonuses, so keep an eye on them. And of course, as your equipment level increases, it becomes quite pricey to unlock these skills. Here you can upgrade your core for the hacking. Here is the black market that I already explained. Here you can buy cures and enhancements. I never use them, but you can get some extra bonuses with oftentimes negative effects. And that's pretty much it. With all of this, I definitely had a blast playing this game. Summarizing the negatives, hacking is super boring. Negative standings needed bigger consequences, and there is a lack of puzzles. But the other side of the coin is filled with amazing things. To me, its gameplay is an 8.5. In the graphics section I check game performance, glitches, aesthetics and other visual things. I had no bugs, drops or stuff like that, which is really appreciated. And some of the settings I love so much is that you can change the size of the UI and perception of your environment by getting closer or farther. These things were amazing because sometimes you want to have big harsh letters, and yeah, it is quite comfy. And the perception while playing is an extraordinary detail, as you can adapt the vision however you prefer, which is something that some dungeon crawlers definitely need. As for the aesthetics of StarCrawlers, the fact is that this game looks gorgeous. I like the cyberpunk elements presented here, how different people have mechanical arms or other kinds of implants, as well as the general design of the dungeons, ships, offices, or whatever you're exploring. Plus the random event I mentioned in the story section. Simply beautiful. However, not everything is amazing, because due to the nature of the game as you play, you will see the same environments over and over and over again. And this is where certain things may lose their charm, particularly the enemies, as there aren't many different sprites, so yeah, repainted enemies everywhere. I will say that until you reach really late chapters, you will start to see different things, but prior to that, yeah, the experience can be a bit stagnant in some points. But something I definitely have to praise is that they didn't go out of their way to force 3D models. If you pay attention to the enemies, they are 2D. Now, I like this detail, because if they don't have the resources to properly execute 3D models, sometimes simplifying these kinds of things deliver way better results. And I say it like that because the other game of this company is a bit ugly, or at least that is my perception. Whatever the case, to me the only negative here is that you will see similar things several times. But considering that this is not a big studio, 9 is fair enough. The level of detail in this game is really good. And last but not least, it's music. Unfortunately, my knowledge in jazz executions is quite poor, but I will say that the kind of setting that was given to the game is simply beautiful. In the main menu you listen to different jazzy compositions, keeping things fresh, as they go around 4-6 minutes, so you won't hear the same track over and over again in the menu. That is a detail other companies need to work around, as sometimes games take over 100 hours and you will hear the same thing. You may think, okay, in paper it sounds good, but are the other menu tracks good? Yep, they for sure deliver an interesting OST. In my humble opinion, this is the best part of the OST in this game. Now, in the dungeons, they have different executions. In general, they are quite chill, and sometimes a bit spooky. Sometimes it feels out of an old school video game. Perhaps my main issue is that there aren't as many tracks, so you are bound to listen to it several times along the journey, aside from really specific compositions. And once initiating combat, most of times combine some move jazz and electronic. In general, they are amazing. The main issue is that they are really short, looping around 1 minute or 1 minute and a half. But aside from that, they go quite well for the ambience given to the game. As for the general sounds, expect amazing quality. There is a nice synergy between the different sounds you will hear around. If there is a shotgun, plays a nice sound. If something has to charge up, you will get the idea really well. If you throw a metallic object, you will get that sound. Let me put a bit of it so you can hear what I mean. Despite having a quite short soundtrack, I consider it an amazing experience. It is a 9. StarCrawlers' final score is an 8.6. For those into this genre, yep, I definitely recommend it, as it was a really good journey. Yes, it starts really slow and you will get tired of looking at the same enemies. I am not going to deny that, but once you get into that classy farming session, getting nice drops here and there while managing your team, I'm sure plenty of you will enjoy this game. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.